It's strange how silence can be the loudest thing in a room. Since he left this world, the walls of our home have taken on a different tone, a hollow echo that fills every space he once occupied. The house feels larger now, somehow, but emptier, too. His laughter, which used to bounce from one corner to another, no longer fills the hallways. The warmth of his presence that once radiated through the rooms lingers only in my memory, like a fading photograph. The house seems to breathe without him, but it's a breath that doesn't quite match the rhythm of my own. Before we go any further into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It truly helps me more than you know. I sit on the edge of our bed each night, the fabric of the sheet still holding traces of his form, a subtle imprint that seems to carry his essence. I tell myself, almost as a mantra, that he's just gone for a little while, that he'll be back soon. But deep down, I know that grief is not something you can simply outrun. It doesn't retreat into the shadows with time. No, grief seeps into you, quietly, steadily, until it melts into your bones. It clings to you in ways you don't expect. Even the simple act of breathing becomes heavier, slower, like the air itself has thickened, and the weight of it all presses down on my chest. Every beat of my heart reminded me of the absence that I can never feel. I never thought I would feel anything again, at least not in the way I used to. Not joy, not excitement, not that familiar softness in your chest that makes your breath catch at the most unexpected moments. I thought I was done with all of that. After everything, it seemed impossible to ever feel that lightness again. But then in the stillness of my days, something began to shift. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, a different presence began to stir within me. It wasn't like the absence I'd grown accustomed to. It was something familiar, something I thought I understood, but never quite like this. His eyes had changed, or maybe it was my own eyes that had begun to see differently. Either way, it started with glances. Not the casual, fleeting exchanges you give someone when passing in a room, but something deeper, something quieter. The kind of glance that lingers just a second too long. A glance that you can almost feel on your skin before you even see it. It wasn't a look of familiarity or obligation. It was something new, something raw. And as it passed between us, it stirred something I hadn't realized was still inside me. Something that had been buried deep, tucked away under layers of sorrow and silence. That glance, the way our eyes briefly met, ignited a spark that had lain dormant for far too long. And in those moments, those quiet, suspended moments when time seemed to hold its breath, I could feel the shift. The past no longer seemed so distant, and the future, once so unclear, began to whisper promises of something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. But was there, undeniable, as if life itself was nudging me towards something I hadn't dared consider before. Something different, something possible, and it all began with those fleeting glances. I had caught him watching me once. No, it wasn't just watching. It was something deeper, something more aware. He wasn't merely looking at me. He was noticing me, really seeing me, as if he was looking through the surface, beyond the exterior, and catching sight of something hidden underneath. It was as though he wasn't just seeing the woman standing there in front of him, but the person I had been before, the person I was now, and perhaps the person I was yet to become. There was a subtle, unspoken understanding in his gaze. It felt like he had been waiting, too, for something. For me, maybe, but also for himself. He had changed, but it was more than just the outward things, the changes that come with time, like growing taller or older. No, he had grown into himself in a way I hadn't expected. He wasn't the same person who once stood beside me, caught up in the noise of our shared past. He was someone different now, someone who didn't just exist in the background of my memories, but who was slowly and quietly and almost imperceptibly becoming a part of my present. His presence had shifted, like the gradual unfolding of something that was always meant to be, but never quite at the right time, until now. One morning, I walked into the kitchen, hoping for the usual quiet, the normal routine I had grown used to. But when I stepped inside, I found him already there, as though he had always been waiting for this moment, this precise moment when I would enter. He was making coffee, the soft steam rising from the mug in his hand. The early morning light poured through the windows, spilling across his face like it belonged there, as though the sunlight had been saving itself just for him. The light highlighted the messiness of his hair, the way the strands fell across his forehead, carelessly untamed, and the rolled-up sleeves of his shirt that only added to the casual comfort of the scene. But it wasn't just the way he looked that made me stop in my tracks. It was the smile he gave me. It wasn't a greeting, nor was it some polite attempt to acknowledge my presence. No, there was something else in it, something that lingered in the way his lips curved, something warm, something that seemed to hold 1,000 unsaid words within it. And for a moment, everything around me stood still. My feet seemed glued to the floor, and I felt a jolt run through me. Was that all it was? A smile? A moment too long. A glance that felt too warm, too charged with something so simple? It was as if he had reached into my chest and stirred something I didn't even realize had been there. But despite the surge of emotions that crashed against my heart, nothing was said. Not a word. Nothing needed to be said. He simply handed me the mug, our fingers brushing in the most delicate of touches. It was the kind of touch that might have been easily overlooked, the briefest flicker of contact that most people would never have noticed. But for me, it was enough to send a rush of electricity through my veins, a shock that seemed to radiate through every part of me. My pulse skipped once, twice, and in that moment, it was as though my entire body had come alive again. The flicker of warmth that traveled from his fingers to mine felt like thunder in my chest. Intense, sudden, undeniable. I quickly turned my eyes away, not wanting him to see the way my heart was racing, not wanting him to know how much that tiny touch had shaken me. But I also knew, deep down I knew that he felt it too. The silence between us, thick with things we weren't saying, grew heavier with each passing day. It wasn't uncomfortable, though, no. It was a different kind of silence, a quiet that was charged with the weight of all the things we hadn't yet found the words to express. It was like a collection of unspoken moments piling up, one after another, just like books stacked neatly on a shelf, their pages full but unopened. Each moment hung in the air between us, waiting for its time to be read, waiting for us to figure out what it meant and what it would become. But for now, we let it hang there, knowing that the story was unfolding, slowly, one word at a time. He would linger in doorways, offer to help with things I didn't need help with. He'd ask about my day, and I'd find myself telling him more than I meant to. There was a kindness in his voice, but something else, something that trembled beneath the surface. It wasn't inappropriate. It wasn't wrong. And yet, it felt like standing too close to a flame, comforting and dangerous at once. One evening, we sat outside on the porch. The wind was soft, brushing through the trees, carrying scents of jasmine and something that felt like memory. We didn't talk much, just sat side by side, but his hand was close enough that if I shifted just slightly, it might graze mine, and I did shift just slightly. Our fingers didn't touch, but the space between them became charged. I could feel the pull of it, the what if, and he turned to me slow and careful, as if afraid the moment might vanish if he moved too quickly. "You've been quiet lately," he said. He nodded. "It's just everything still feels different." He looked at me for a long time. Different doesn't always mean bad. I wanted to reply, but I couldn't. His gaze held mine, and in it, I saw all the things we hadn't said. His eyes were steady, but there was a softness there, a kind of unguarded tenderness that made me want to lean in just to see if the warmth was real. "I miss him," I whispered, and my voice cracked. He leaned closer, not too close, just enough to make me feel like I wasn't alone in that space. "I miss him, too. But I see you, and you don't have to carry everything by yourself." There was a lump in my throat I couldn't swallow down, and for a moment, I wanted to rest my head on his shoulder. I didn't, but the thought lingered. The next few weeks passed like a delicate song, playing in the background of a quiet life. He started bringing me little things, flowers from the garden, my favorite snacks from the store, fixing things around the house without being asked. And I started to notice the way my heart reacted when he entered a room. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't shame. It was something gentler, like hope wrapped in hesitation. One afternoon, it rained heavy and fast. We were both caught in the backyard, trying to bring in the laundry before it got soaked. We laughed as we ran, arms full of wet clothes, hair clinging to our faces. By the time we got inside, we were drenched and breathless. I looked at him, and he looked at me. Something passed between us. Something wordless and powerful. My clothes clung to my skin, and his eyes lingered for a second longer than they should have. But it wasn't desire in them. It was longing, the kind that comes from holding back. I turned away, pretending to busy myself with the laundry. He stepped closer, not touching, but near enough that I could feel his warmth behind me. I didn't move. "You look beautiful," he said, voice low and barely audible above the rain. I froze. My heart thundered. I wanted to ask why he said that. I wanted to ask what he meant, but I knew, deep down, I knew. I turned slowly. His face was calm, but his eyes were stormy. I could see the conflict there, the struggle between what was right and what was real. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did," I said before I could stop myself. He stepped back, giving me space, giving me time. "I just want you to know you're not invisible." Not to me. That night, I couldn't sleep. His words played over and over in my head. I wasn't invisible. Not to him. And somehow, that meant more than I could admit. The next day, I found him sitting by the window, sketching. I didn't know he drew. I asked if I could see, and he hesitated before turning the book around. It was me, not in an obvious way. It wasn't about likeness. It was about feeling. The curve of a shoulder, the way the light fell on the side of a face. He had drawn me the way I felt when I used to be loved, as if someone had memorized my softness and wanted to keep it safe. I didn't say anything. Couldn't, but I sat beside him, closer this time, close enough that our arms touched, and I didn't move away. Days bled into nights, each one bringing us closer to a line neither of us wanted to cross, but neither of us could ignore. He became my quiet, my comfort, and maybe I became his reason to stay. One evening, I couldn't take the weight of silence anymore. "Do you think it's wrong?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, startled. "What this?" "Whatever it is we're not saying," he sighed, resting his elbows on his knees. "It's not wrong to care. It's not wrong to feel something, but I don't want to hurt you or confuse you. You've lost so much." I nodded, my throat tight. "But I'm still here and I feel alive again because of you." He turned to me slowly. "Then let's just be here together. No promises, no expectations, just here." And in that moment, the world felt quiet again. But this time, not in mourning, this time in peace. There was something sacred in the way the days passed after that conversation. He didn't rush anything, and neither did I. But everything felt more intentional. Every glance, every word, every shared silence held weight. We didn't call it love, but in all the quiet ways that mattered, it was growing between us like ivy, climbing to the cracks of our hearts. Some evenings we cooked together. He would stand beside me, offering help he knew I didn't need, reaching for spices that were already within my grasp, lingering near my shoulder longer than necessary. I would pretend not to notice, though my heart beat faster with every passing moment. The kitchen became our sanctuary, filled with the clatter of utensils and the hum of something we didn't dare name. One night, as we prepared dinner, I dropped a spoon. We both reached for it at the same time. Our hands collided and we froze. His fingers gently brushed mine as he picked it up, and for the first time, he didn't pull away. His touch lingered, soft like a question waiting to be answered. "I think about you," he said suddenly, as if the words had been bottled up for too long. I looked at him, startled. "Not in a way that disrespects what we've lost," he continued, "but in a way that honors what could still be found." My breath caught. There was nothing improper in his voice. Only honesty, only hope. I looked away, afraid that meeting his gaze might make my heart betray its steady rhythm. "I don't know what this is," I whispered. He stepped a little closer. "It doesn't have to be anything yet. I just want to be near you. And if that's all it ever is, that's still enough." That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at the ceiling, my mind circling around his words. I hadn't expected him to say it, but once he did, I couldn't unhear it. I couldn't unknow the way my body reacted when he entered the room, or the way my soul leaned toward his without permission. The seasons began to shift. Autumn colored the trees outside with hues that mirrored the slow burn I felt inside. We spent more time together, without needing excuses. Late walks in the neighborhood, sharing books, listening to old records in the quiet of the living room. The house that once felt too big for one heart now felt full again. But it was a different kind of fullness. Gentle, healing, slow. One afternoon, a neighbor dropped by unexpectedly. She glanced at us sitting together and raised a curious brow. Later, she sent me a message, short, sharp, and filled with quiet judgment. She didn't need to say much. The implication was clear. I stared at her words, my chest tightening. The world didn't understand, and maybe it never would. But that didn't mean what I felt was wrong. Still, doubt slipped in like a chill draft through a cracked window. That night, I grew distant. I avoided his gaze, kept conversations brief. He noticed, of course, he did. He always noticed. He found me in the garden the next morning, pulling at weeds that didn't need to be pulled. Did I do something? He asked softly. I shook my head, not trusting my voice. He stepped closer. Then why do you look at me like I'm someone you're trying to forget? I turned toward him, heart heavy, because it would be easier if I could. He didn't speak for a moment. When he finally did, his voice was steady. I don't want to be easy. I want to be real. And just like that, the walls I'd started to rebuild crumbled again. I stepped toward him just a little, close enough to feel the warmth between us. The sun was peeking through the trees, casting golden patterns on his skin. He looked at me the way one looks at a painting you're afraid to touch. Full of awe, full of care. I think I'm afraid, I whispered. He nodded. So am I. But I'd rather be afraid with you than safe without you. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to be held, not with arms, but with presence, with the steadiness of someone who wasn't asking for anything more than this moment. Later that evening, as we sat on the porch, I leaned into him, just a little. My shoulder brushed his, and I didn't pull away. Neither did he. The silence stretched soft and familiar. Do you remember that night it rained? I asked. He smiled. I think about it all the time. So do I. I admitted it was the first time I felt something again. He turned to me, eyes searching mine. And now, I looked down then up at him. Now I feel everything. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached out slowly, gently, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers barely grazed my skin, but my entire body reacted as if he touched something deeper than flesh. The world around us seemed to fade. No past, no future, just now. Eventually, he stood and reached for my hand. Come with me. I followed him through the house, up the stairs into the attic. He had transformed the space. Soft light strung from the beams, books stacked neatly beside a cozy chair, and a small table with tea already waiting. I've been working on something, he said, picking up a notebook. He hesitated before handing it to me. It's about you, about us. Not a story, just pieces of moments. I opened the book and read. His words weren't polished, but they were honest. Raw emotion scribbled across the page. About grief, about finding beauty in unexpected places, about a woman who unknowingly breathed life back into someone who didn't know he needed saving. I closed the book, heart trembling. Why are you giving this to me? I asked. Because I want you to know that I see you, he said. Not just as someone who was loved once, but as someone still worthy of being cherished. I looked up at him, tears threatening to rise. And before I could speak, he added softly, You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. I stood there for a moment, holding the notebook to my chest. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I stepped into him, wrapping my arms around his waist. He stiffened, surprised, then melted into the embrace. We stayed like that, quiet, still, heart speaking where words could not. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling again. But this time, I wasn't haunted by silence. I was held by the thought of someone downstairs, someone who had become more than a presence, more than a friend, someone who had waited patiently for my heart to find its way back to itself. Over the next few days, something shifted. We didn't have to hide anymore. Not from each other, at least. the world still wouldn't understand. But within the walls of our home, we created a space where healing looked like laughter again, where grief could sit quietly in the corner while life continued to unfold around it. One morning, as we sipped tea in the attic, he turned to me with a quiet smile. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course. If things were different, if life had given us a different path, do you think we still would have found each other?" I looked at him, my heart full. "I think some connections find a way, no matter the path." He nodded slowly, reaching for my hand. This time, I didn't hesitate. I let his fingers interlace with mine. Thank you for staying with us. If you find it interesting and useful, please subscribe, like, and share so you don't miss the next video. Thanks.